Hello, friends. Welcome to Soul Shift Coaching. I am David Hale. This is where I am responding to a new call in my life to take to a wider audience that which has freely been given to me, and that is a transformed life, a transformed mindset as the result of knowing peace, understanding freedom, and bringing peace and freedom together, applying them through daily discipline, and reaping that radical harvest of transformation that is always on the other side of discipline. And so here we are today with another video, and this is kind of a part 2 to a video I recently posted as to why is change so difficult? Why can't we stay changed? Right? A lot of us will change for a day, a week, a month, maybe even for 100 days or half a year. But why can't we stay changed? There are numbers to back this up, and it's what I've seen in my own life and what I've seen in others as I have been blessed to help walk people down this path of transformation. Roughly 10% of people get changed and stay changed. You know who they are. There's only a handful of them. One day they were this way, and then the next they were that way, and they've stayed that way. Why is change, lasting change, permanent change so difficult? Well, in the prior video, I spoke about the Grand Canyon of old thoughts, behaviors, and patterns of response, our response muscles, and this Grand Canyon of detrimental and unhealthful responses. Because what we do is we learn certain coping mechanisms and certain coping skills as we go through life. Those just become so ingrained in us, and we have so many thoughts, repetitive thoughts that come about that they just forge a Grand Canyon in our mind. Because neuroscience has told us that there are paths literally created. And because we have well over 2 million thoughts a year, as the days and weeks and months and years unfold, we've just forged paths, deep, winding paths of coping skills and coping mechanisms, building response muscles that are just detrimental or unhelpful. And of course, not all of them. But the issue is that no one can respond healthfully and maturely 100% of the time. And because we're formed, those formative years from ages 6 to 10, when you don't know anything, what do you know when you're 6 to 10? You don't know how to respond to life maturely, but you do know things when things are jacked up. And you do know you need to protect yourself. And so what we do with those coping mechanisms and skills is we just keep ourselves safe. And we come to learn that, hey, when I did this last time, it kept me safe. When I hid or said that or didn't say that, it worked and it kept me safe. And so what we do is we carry with us what we think works through our life. And over time, as external shocks, as I call them, come into our life, we all have them as you scan back over time, whether it's the divorce of parents, the loss of a loved one, financial stress. Like I've said, we all grow up in a dysfunctional home. It just depends on to which degree. And so sometimes that dysfunction can be utterly traumatic. And so we go through life not only growing up in a system of dysfunction, but then we also have these external shocks because no one gets out of here without external shocks. And so we have this family of dysfunction and these external shocks that come together and feed off of each other and over time forge this Grand Canyon of old thoughts, old behaviors, or unhealthful thoughts and unhealthful behaviors that are attached and associated with our past. And what I suggested in the prior video was that because we have so many thoughts that create such deep grooves in our brain, that by default, just like water follows the path of least resistance, well, so too does our thoughts. And so too does our responses, because the only thing we can control in this life is our response to it. And so when we get stressed or when we get shocked or when we get backed into a corner or step into the unknown, we default to what we think works for us. And it's those coping skills that we've learned during our formative years and that were put on steroids by the external shocks that we've all experienced. And over time, what we do is we create this vast Grand Canyon of detrimental thoughts, unhealthful responses, and response muscles that are trained in the wrong way. And what we need to do is we need to start creating new response muscles. We need to somehow leave that Grand Canyon of old thoughts that was dominated by our mind and our body. See, that Grand Canyon of old thoughts that keeps us unnecessarily anchored to our past. Change is so difficult because that Grand Canyon is so deep and it's so winding. And all of those thoughts and behaviors and patterns come from our very inside, because when we have dysfunction and we build these coping skills and we have external shocks, it rocks us to our very core. And what happens is that Grand Canyon is dominated by our mind and our body. And I'm just going to tell you, it is no bueno to go upstairs without adult supervision. If we are just driven by our brain, we will end up in trouble. Similarly, if we're just driven by our body, driven by our emotions, that too is no bueno. Emotions are beautiful and they're good, but they can get really out of whack, especially when we've grown up in a system of dysfunction and have these external shocks to our system. And so we end up having emotions that aren't properly calibrated. And so that Grand Canyon of old thoughts and behaviors and patterns are dominated by our mind and our body. We don't want that. And so what I suggested in the prior video was that the first tool that we use to start to forge new thought grooves in our brain, because that's what neuroscience has told us. Each time we have a thought, it literally creates a little path. And over time, those paths become deeper and deeper and more refined and more defined. And the first thing that we needed to do, as I suggested to you, is understand that we are mind, body, and spirit in constant relationship with ourselves. And if that old way of thinking and doing was driven by our mind and our body, well, then the new one has to be driven by our spirit. And see, what we want to do is we want to have our spirit lead our mind and pull our body through on this path of transformation. And what I suggested to you is that you pick a word for this season that you're in, as you are leaving behind those old thoughts and ways and patterns and forging new ones, that you pick a word that is reflective of the person that you are constantly recreating yourself to be. See, only human beings can envision who they want to be. Only human beings constantly create their future self right here and right now. And so what I suggested to you is that you pick a word for this season. And that word needs to touch you so deep that it connects to your soul, because your soul is the connection to the eternal. And because it is eternal, it never peters out. The eternal must be the literal power that pulls us down this road of transformation. It can't be our head, because one day we'll quit. It can't be our body, because our body will physically give out. But if we are pulled by our spirit and led by our spirit as the connection to the eternal, for the eternal being the power and the juice, then our mind and our body and our spirit can work in unison. And when you have all three of them pulling together, there is nothing better. That is unity. That is peace. When you have your mind, body, and spirit all pulling in one direction. And so what I suggested to you is that you pick a word as you leave that old thought pattern and start a new one. And maybe your word is forgiveness, because maybe you're harboring unforgiveness in your heart. And as you live each and every day, you can constantly create your future self saying, one day I will forgive him or her. Or one day I will forgive me. A lot of us need to forgive ourselves. And so forgiveness can be the word that you choose for this season, that you meditate on, chew on, dwell in, abide in. Some of you all might choose innocence, I suggested in the prior video, that you can look back and you think, oh, I want to recapture some of my innocence before that external shock. So every time you see a baby or a child, it can remind you of the innocence that you are recreating. We can recreate ourselves one day at a time, because we're constantly creating our future self. And so maybe you meditate on, dwell in, chew on the word innocence each and every day, because what we got to remember is, if our word is forgiveness, or if our word is innocence, if our word is beauty, and I'm not talking magazine cover, I'm talking about the beauty of a restored relationship, or the beauty of a person who is humbly confident, because that humility is directly related to the fact that they know they have connected to the eternal, and that it is the eternal that's pulling them down this path. And so what I suggested to you is that we have this word for the season: forgiveness, beauty, or innocence, and that it is that eternal that is the power that drives us down this path of transformation. And then there's a second tool to help us combat how difficult it is to actually change, right? Only 10% of people get changed and stay changed. And we want to stay changed, but we have to overcome the deep, winding Grand Canyon of old thoughts and behaviors. And the first thing that we do is we make sure that we understand we're mind, body, and spirit, and that we connect our spirit to the eternal through the word for this season. What you need or want to see in your future self: forgiveness, beauty, restored relationships, innocence as the power to pull you along. And then associated with that word as it pulls you through on this path of transformation, is that you need to connect that word and those associated thoughts with that word to constructive action. We must marry our thoughts and our actions to truly forge a new path. When you think back to that old Grand Canyon, what were you doing? You're both thinking and reacting. It was thoughts and actions. Maybe you hid, maybe you say something, maybe you ran away. There was a visceral reaction as you were coping with your past. And so in order to combat the mind and body reaction that drove and created that old Grand Canyon, we too have to incorporate our mind and our body in unison as it's pulled through on the spirit. So in our mind, we're focusing on that word: forgiveness, innocence, beauty, whatever it is. We are thinking about all those things that can be forgiven, why we want to forgive, what is beauty, what is innocence, and everything that wraps around us as we meditate on that word and all that it means to us. Okay, that's our mind part. And then as we are chewing on that word and meditating on that word and dwelling on that word and abiding in that word, we're doing something constructive to marry our mind and our body together so it's pulling in the same direction with our mind, body, and spirit. So, for example, something constructive could be taking a walk around the block as you chew on and meditate on that word. So as you're taking a walk around the block, you are beautifying your body. You are healing your body. You are helping nurture your body because you are doing a physical activity. Maybe you can clean the house, mow the yard, wash your car. Do something that is constructive to beautify your space or beautify your body. And like I said, you could go on a run, you could work out, you could take a walk, whatever your level of exercise is, so that you are not only doing something constructive, but you're also beautifying and healing and improving your surroundings, whether it's your physical body or where you live. So we are associating our mind with our body, new thoughts, the thoughts centered on the word and the words that connect your spirit to the eternal, and doing something to improve and beautify yourself and or your surroundings. So what are we doing with that? We are having new thoughts associated with improvement and beauty. New thoughts, improvement, and beauty. Does that sound like the path of transformation? Yes, it is. Because your new transformed self is improved and beautiful. And you're creating your future self each and every day. That's it, my friends. Those are two tools that I have used and seen others use in their lives to help them leave that Grand Canyon of old thoughts, unhealthful thoughts, detrimental thoughts, response muscles that were built in the wrong way. And this is the way we can build new response muscles with new thoughts, with constructive action. So we combine our mind and our body. And so we associate new thoughts with the new words for the season: forgiveness, beauty, perseverance, innocence, whatever it might be for you. In our thoughts and our body, we heal our body, we improve our body, we beautify our body, whether it's a walk or a run or the gym or whatever you do, or we beautify our surroundings, which is our home. So we can associate the new thoughts with actions that are constructive and they beautify. Because like I said, the person you will be on the other end of this path of transformation is improved and beautiful. That's it, friends. If you've liked this content, please give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And please also subscribe to the channel where you can see other content that I've posted. You can also see the description box below other places to find me, like soulshift.org, my coaching site, where you can learn more about me, my approach, and my style, And you can also go to the book coaching link and book a free consultation where you and I can connect and learn about who you are, where you are, how you got there, and who you might want to become. Because I'd be honored and privileged to help guide you on this path of transformation. Because remember, friends, there is always a radical harvest of transformation on the other side of discipline. Thank you for being here.